You shake my nerves and you rattle my brain. Too much of love drives a man insane. You broke my will, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
Welcome to the 50th episode of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Yes, folks, we've completed a half century of these things.
Bloody
a
hell.
year of our rambling nonsense and ranting opinions. I'm here with my old partner in crime, Mark Pringle.
Hello, Barney.
And RBP's very own hip young gunslinger, Jasper Murison Bowie.
Hello, Barney.
To celebrate this august occasion. And boy, do we have a show for you today.
We sure do.
To help celebrate this splendid half-century, Jasper's going to tell you all about a very exciting giveaway that we're offering this week.
Yeah, it's actually running for a month from now to celebrate our 50th podcast. We're going to be giving away over 50 months' worth of full access to all of Rock's Back Pages. That is 40,000 text articles, all the audio interviews. Plus, we're giving away 5 copies of Major Dudes, our Steely Dan reader, because, you know, we're major dudes. But
Speak for yourself,
or at least
Jasper.
minor dudes.
Minor
or
dudes.
Just dudes.
Dudes.
Or
Definitely
we're
something
certainly
like
not
that.
young dudes.
No.
Apart from one of us.
Well, yeah, quite.
Yes.
But so that's 15 lucky winners will walk away with either a book or a subscription, and you can enter that at rocksbackpages.com/giveaway. The links will be in the description everywhere. So check that out. Do enter. There are lots of ways to enter. You can review it, you can subscribe to it, and all that stuff. So we'd love to have you enter, and we'd love to have you win a subscription. So
Great, thanks, Jasper. Terrific. We're going to start on a slightly more sombre note, actually, despite the air of celebration in the RBP cupboard,
Yes.
as dubbed by David Hepworth. We lost this week the writer Nick Tosches.
The very great writer, Nick Tosches.
The very great Nick Tosches, whose work we've featured in the RBP library for a number of years. One of our sort of superstar names in many ways. Nick passed away just a few days short of his 70th birthday.
Three days before his 70th birthday.
Yeah, and I mean, we have 3 pieces that we're featuring to try and give a sense of what an extraordinary writer Tosches was. One of them is from Fusion. The first magazine Nick ever wrote for was Fusion in 1969.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Fusion piece from 71 about Captain Beefheart, and it is Nick in kind of full gonzoid sort of mode. He probably
he's a
would
great stylist.
yeah, it's sort of hilarious writing. He later very much disavowed that sort of gonzo label, but he was one of those writers who came through in the late 60s, who wrote in this extraordinary free-form,
Yeah.
free associative,
I mean,
speed freak style.
I'd say it's sort of out of the new journalism via the likes of Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes.
There's a lot of Hunter S. Thompson in his early writing. And then he sort of, well, you go ahead
Yeah,
with this
well,
bit.
so this is just a blast of Tosches in his sort of early prime, March 71 Fusion. A long piece on Captain Beefheart, really just trying to convey what's so great about Don Van Vliet. He isn't caught up in the ego rush muck of contriving nifty time signatures. His music comes direct, untampered, uncut, uncured, and safe as milk. And when his atemporal, asymmetrical alpha wave poesies shatter the primordial circadian rhythms of the collective 1970 Judeo-honk emotional neural brain midden, the reactive feeling is initially one of discomfort. His music carries the same horrific intimidation to defense-oriented conditioning that a 3-year-old kid playing with his shit in a toilet bowl does. Boom!
Deep breath in.
Yeah, deep breath.
I mean, the thing is that eventually he developed into a stylist who could carry the energy of the music or whatever else he was writing about into his writing. I mean, one of my favourite things of his is his fabulous biography of the great, well, not so great, boxer Sonny Liston, Night Train, which is just a monstrously brilliant piece of writing.
Yeah.
And he puts you into the guy's skin in a curious kind of way. I mean, his writing about Jerry Lee Lewis, he was possibly the major writer about Jerry Lee Lewis, has the energy of Jerry Lee Lewis in the pages.
Well, they're like novels, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Liston book and the Jerry Lee book.
Yeah.
They're written in a kind of quasi-fictional style
Yeah.
that's so captivating.
Yeah.
It's very different from conventional biography.
Absolutely.
And it's remarkable when a writer can put you in a situation like that and
Yeah.
kind of give you sensations just through words that are like listening to music or
I think
like
that's right.
watching sport or whatever it might
Where
be.
the writing contains the energy that the
Absolutely.
music.
It's a
I mean, the other thing is, of
amazing
course,
to be able
he
to
was
do.
one of the first people to seriously write about the sort of pre-rock and roll, the progenitors of rock and roll. He had the Unsung Heroes of Rock and Roll, which became a book.
Yeah.
Started off as a column in Cream, where he wrote about the likes of Wynonie Harris. And whilst they are more strict biographical, they list the records he made and all that, it's still got that extraordinary quality. He sort of brings these people to life for a readership who probably knew nothing about this, who thought that rock and roll started with Elvis Presley.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Well, and in fact, the last of the pieces by Nick pretty much says that rock and roll was already dead before Elvis appeared. There's a great rant for Spin in August 1990 called Hail, Hail Rock and Roll, ironically. And he just says, I mean, let's get it straight. Rock and roll is dead, deader than the 80s, deader than Liberace, deader than the papal penis, dead. Bill Haley, the first white rock and roll star, came, turned to shit, and went all in one fell swoop. By the summer of 1954. In other words, the cycle was already complete. The beast of rock and roll had been tamed for the circus of the masses by the time Elvis, another dead fuck, came along. Wow.
I mean, things like, I love this because via my fandom of that band Rugulator and going backstage, what's this song you're playing? All she wants to do is rock. And they said, Wynonie Harris. And the next week in Brick Lane Market, I found the King cutout album of Wynonie Harris and just fell in love with all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
great.
that claim that it was already dead before Elvis came on, slightly undermined by the fact that he wrote this incredible book about Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah.
You know, with it. So there's just fantastic stories in that book about a very, very drunken Jerry Lee coming to the gates of Graceland in the middle of the night and demanding that Elvis get out of bed.
Yeah, famous.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, he was a controversialist. What you've just read is him actually trying to wind up his readership with a chunk of truth in it.
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
But great writer.
I only met him the one time, took him out on the RBP dime in New York, where he lived nearly all his life. He was a very entertaining,
Was he funny in person as
guy.
well?
He was very, very funny. I mean, I think Nick could be pretty cantankerous, like a lot of those guys, like Meltzer and others of that generation. The Unholy Trinity, dubbed the Noise Boys by James Wolcott, Lester Bangs most famously, Richard Meltzer, the most extreme of those writers. And Tosh is the one who probably who sort of outstripped rock culture.
Yes, absolutely.
And became, a best-selling author. I mean, his Dean Martin biography was a bestseller.
Absolutely.
You know, Sonny Liston, I think, sold pretty well.
You say that he could be cantankerous, but one thing that was really noticeable when he died, that a lot of our American music journalist friends on Facebook were saying how in person, how lovely he was. I mean, no one expressed any sort of reservations. But they said that there's about 3 or 4 people who had some dealings with him, and they just said, actually, in person, he's much less frightening in person than he was in print.
Yeah, I think that's right. He was charming. He had a fabulous smile, and was really a warm guy, as I recall from that one encounter. Yeah. But then he could be capable of sort of rolling out of bed the wrong side,
I'm sure,
and sort of demanding all his stuff taken off Rock's back pages until he was reminded that actually he had signed a contract with us. But I mean, look, and Tom Waits said that Tosches writes like music sounds, and that was a huge tribute. I remember telling Nick that, and
Chuck Wepner, he was the boxer in the jacket of the Suddenly Listen book, says Nick Tosches writes like Liston punches.
Yeah.
It's the same
High
thing.
Praise in both counts.
Yeah. Anyway, there's tons of Tosches out there in print. There's the Nick Tosches reader that Da Capo published is a fantastic introduction. But Hellfire, I think, was voted the best music book of all time in The Observer.
Is that right?
Yeah. So go forth and read Nick Tosches, and we will miss him, and many people will miss him.
Hold back the dawn. Stop all the clocks. I just got the news that my baby wants to rock. All she wants to do is rock.
Also free on the homepage this week, we are featuring two long pieces about Motörhead.
Hurrah!
This is so essentially this week sees the release of the two albums that they released in the year 1979, Overkill and Bomber.
Yep.
The two albums
Two
that
pretty
really
solid albums.
Oh, brilliant.
solid metal albums that really cemented their reputation.
The classic Motörhead lineup was Filthy Animal Taylor and
Fast Eddie Clarke.
Yeah. You know, the best iteration of that band.
Yes. Absolutely. So we've got a piece by Giovanni Doddomo from Sounds, March 79, when Overkill has just come out. And then a Chris Salovich piece from NME later that year, August, when Bomber is about to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And both these pieces, on revisiting them, reminded me of what was special about Motörhead. There's a great thing in Doddomo's piece. As for all the carnivores, laser-assisted midgets and Mickey Mouse-faced blood-spitting clowns in silly shoes that make up the US of A's alternatives to heavy metal. Pfui! P-F-U-I! Exclamation mark. Make mine Motörhead, landlord. Overkill will delight the converted and swell their ranks enormously. Mark, tell us about, because you saw Motörhead very early.
Yeah, my regret is I never saw this iteration of the band.
This lineup was probably the best.
I think I've already recounted this on the podcast before, but I saw them supporting Gloucester Cult in 75 at Hammersmith Odeon. This is the Larry Wallis iteration of the band. And I mean, they were appalling. You know, Larry tried to tune his guitar up with his fuzzbox on, which you just cannot do, and the whole audience were going up, up, down, down. But I remember them far more clearly than I remember Blue Oyster Cult, who bored me. And there was a sort of mad energy to what they did. I'd seen Lemmy before. I'd seen them with Hawkwind not more than a couple of times. They played a lot of free concerts, and I also roaded for their support band at the Edmonton Sundown, and that was around the time of Silver Machine. And Lemmy was kind of in Hawkwind, but not really of them. There was always something distinctly different. He had previously roaded for Hendrix and so on and so forth. The guy had a really kind of interesting hinterland as a kind of northern British rock and roller. But Motörhead, that gig I saw, they almost fell to pieces after that. They were having a real struggle. And so you're talking about 4 years, and he gets these two new guys in, young guys, much younger than him, while the first band, certainly Larry Wallis, was kind of the same rock and roll generation. And they just took off. They were just, I think, fabulous. I mean, Lemmy's voice is an unlovely thing.
Yes.
But who cares?
It suits the context.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it's all about that energy and all about that.
And those two other guys, Taylor and Fast Eddie, were just really good players.
They were really good players.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to Overkill again, it was almost like I found myself thinking, this is like a sort of punk ZZ Top.
Yeah.
You know, there's a fantastic track, Limb from Limb, the last track, I think, on Overkill, which is a terrific riff. I mean, it's worth remembering that they did bring something of the sort of raw savagery of punk to metal.
So. Very much so.
Metal had turned into a bloated joke by then, and Motörhead had much more in common. Also, they had these connections with, like, Stiff and Chiswick, and they were right in the midst of that whole London punk thing.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, you've got to also remember, those two albums came out around exactly the same time as the new wave of British heavy metal.
Exactly, yeah.
They were never really part of the new wave of British heavy metal. They were a different beast altogether. As you say, closer to punk in many respects. This extraordinary energy. I mean, I
really like the Doddomo piece, actually. It's quite funny. It paints a picture of them as, you know, your archetypal hard rockers that, you know, talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There's a very funny bit where Doddomo goes, Lemmy, I tell Lemmy, trying to make words to fit the feel. Lemmy, there's a hell of a lot of people out there who respect you, man. Lemmy laughs. Respect, says Lemmy? I don't think it's so much respect as awe. Most of them are just fucking amazed that I'm still alive.
Yeah, well, when you read Salovich's piece, this is a fantastic story that Lemmy tells about being in Hawkwind playing a roundhouse. I mean, notorious speed freak, Lemmy. You know, absolutely how he was still alive at this point, God knows. But he talks about him and Dick Mick of Hawkwind. We'd had about a gram of amphetamine sulfate each, 10 black bombers each. Somebody gave us a tab of acid each. We ate them, and then somebody gave us 2 more. And we ate them as well, and then somebody gave us some cocaine, and somebody gave us a mandrax. they're about to go on stage. It's like, we were both like stiff as boards. It was just like, they had to wedge our legs onto the back of the stage and push us upwards. And Lemmy says, I'm going, where's the crowd? And Dogg, our manager, says, that way. Speed is central to the story of Motörhead. They played really fast. There wasn't a huge amount of kind of finesse. It was a lot of power.
Well, going back to the first iteration of the band that I saw, the drummer, Lucas Cox, as his real name, but rechristened Lucas Fox to be a bit more rock and roll, he attempted to keep up with Lemmy's speed consumption and was out of the band within months. He just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's
heroic stuff.
Absolutely. I did a lot of speed in those days. Sulfate was the poor man's cocaine.
Yeah.
It was £5 a gram, and that would keep you flying for a long time.
Yeah.
But, I just got sick of it. It's not, how he sustained, about 4 decades of doing speed or more,
he probably would have lived to about 120 if he did. But what I like about Lemmy is actually, people have an idea of Lemmy as a sort of cartoon heavy rocker. But actually he was a bright guy.
He was
quite well read.
Yeah.
And and sort of knew that there was something absurd about all this. He talks in the Salovich piece about this idiot rock musician lifestyle. And Salovich talks about meeting him in the squat in Feb 77, and he's reading P.G. Woodhouse, along with all these books about the Third Rock.
Right, yeah.
And there's quite a nice bit where Salovich talks about asking about the National Front. Lemmy says, never underestimate the power of bigotry.
Yeah.
Which is a nice thing to read all this time later. Yes, he did have, iron crosses and things. He sort of flirted with that imagery, but he was never condoning it in any way.
No.
And lastly, in this context, we didn't really mark the passing of the aforementioned Larry Wallis. There's a piece from July 2002 by Dave Thompson about Larry, interview with Larry, and a fascinating guy, Larry Wallis.
I saw him a lot. I saw him a lot with the Pink Fairies. As I said, I saw him with Motörhead. If you get a moment, go on YouTube and look for Pink Fairies, maybe Pink Fairies, Larry Wallis. There's some live stuff. I think particularly there's a French TV show. And he was a wild guitar player. He was a fabulously wild guitar player.
Yes.
Not like a metal player at all. Very psychedelic in many ways, but very Hendrixy in certain respects. But, he's a man with a Stratocaster who could just take that instrument all kinds of places. The last time we saw him, oddly enough, in a much more subdued version...
Is this the Royal Way?
No.
Or am I included?
Yes, no, it's you and I. Mick Farron's book launch.
Right.
In that pub up in Islington.
Yeah.
And his duo played, and Larry was the guitar player with that. A very subdued version of Larry, you know. But, I always... I saw the Pink Fairies a whole lot of times, because, again, they used to play free concerts under the West Way or in Meanwhile Gardens and so on, all around where I kind of currently live.
Yeah.
And the Fairies were Mick Farron's old band, The Deviants, sort of reworked. And they were a great rock and roll band.
Yeah.
They really were. Their records never really stacked up to much, but live, they could really sort of do it. And so, Larry was a kind of wonderful guy. And again, he got involved, he's very involved in stiff records. He even had a sort of punk hit.
Yeah, Police Car.
That's right.
Yeah. Great record.
But totally unlike Larry Wallis,
so Motörhead was really a very small part of the Larry Wallis story, wasn't it? Because, then he actually produced Gary Gilmore's Eyes by the Adverts.
Did he?
Great punk single.
One of the great punk
Because
singles.
Jake Riviera literally offered him a gig as sort of being the house producer on Stiff. And their first single was on Stiff. Then they went to Anchor Records. And he produced Gary Gilmore's Eyes, which was one of the big early punk hits.
Absolutely.
So, he had his kind of fingers in all sorts of pies. He's also got a really nice turn of phrase in this short interview that Thompson did when he talks about being asked to join Motörhead. And he says, this is 75. It was just as if the serendipity fairy had arrived. Lemmy had been imprisoned in Hawkwind and was now flexing his leathern wings. It just had to be. I love it. Well, unfortunately, it had to be, but it wasn't.
Yeah, really. That version.
And Wallis left. He was gone by 76, really, wasn't
I
he?
mean, Larry was fond of his drugs too. I very briefly met him because he was an old pal of Martin Stone, Chili Willinder, and Red Hot Peppers guitar player, who was briefly in the Pink Fairies with Larry. There was one iteration of, and he came round to the house once and I basically sort of said hello. But he took a lot of drugs, he drank a lot probably. That generation of musicians...
Just did.
Fundamentally.
Well, so we're saying goodbye not only to Nick Tosches, but a sort of belated farewell to Larry Wallis.
'Cause I'm a police car. Police car. I'm a police car.
And that concludes the sort of free offerings portion of the show. And we are now going to talk about our rather fabulous audio interview for this week, aren't we, Mark?
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Goody.
This is Snoop Dogg. He was still Doggy Dogg back then. Interviewed 22nd December 1993, which was almost exactly a month after Doggy Style had come out.
Yeah.
Doggy Style had gone straight to #1 in the Billboard
Incredible.
Top 100.
It was the first time that ever happened.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
A new artist
Is that-
with his first album going straight to #1 on the Billboard chart.
There's this guy. Was already something of a star because of his work on The Chronic with Dre. But suddenly he was a megastar.
Yeah.
What's not talked about in this interview is he had this murder charge hanging over him. It's sort of talked around because what he talks about, he talks quite great length about his youth, about, growing up in Compton in kind of some poverty. And in fact, shall we listen to that?
What a brilliant
shall we
idea.
listen to that
Let's
clip now?
actually hear Snoop talking.
A word of warning, the sound quality is not great. This is recorded on a micro cassette, so it's not gorgeous, but it's really worth listening.
Absolutely.
With so much drama in the LBC, it's kind of hard being Snoop D-O double G, but I somehow, some way, keep coming up with funky ass shit like every single day.
Can you talk a little bit about life as a teenager? What sort of temptations and problems came around?
There wasn't no money at the house. My mama was a single parent with me and my two brothers, working a job that wasn't paying much, and I was tired of seeing her struggle, so I got misled and saw that easy money and tried to make it. Ended up going to jail and being on probation and, dealing with that the way I dealt with it. I mean, it was just tired of seeing my family struggle like that. And I felt there was a thing to do since I couldn't get a good job that was paying, that wouldn't interfere with me going to school, and and it was temptation, and I took it. But I'm blessed enough to live through it and see it, so now it's on.
Laid back.
I mean, his mother was a major figure for him. He is challenged about his use of misogynistic language about women in the interview, and he does this. I mean, I don't buy it. But the classic hip hop thing. Oh, it's those women. It's the ones who come up to you after the show who kind of want to have sex with you. They're the bitches. They're the hoes. But actually, all the other women are fabulous. I don't buy that.
It's not it doesn't quite stack up.
But he does come over. He talks quite extensively about the nature of black society, about kind of people having kids way too young.
He's very reflective on all of that.
He really
and quite
is.
incisive about how he
Yeah.
talks about it. And he's very young at this point.
He's very young, but I
he's
mean,
like just about to turn 23.
And he talks very interestingly about sort of his probation officer, who basically kind of gave him a free pass on a few kind of offences he committed and he talks about the difference between it's one thing being put in the county jail for a few days, it's something else altogether being sent to the penitentiary.
And he talks about being uplifted by fellow prisoners at the county jail who are telling him, you're too good at rapping to be stuck in prison. And he talks about how that really built him up to make something of himself. And
Absolutely.
I mean, make something of himself he certainly has.
Later on, we're going to play a clip where he talks about how Al Green was one of the major voices he heard in his youth.
Fascinating to hear.
And actually very relevant, because in a curious kind of way, he is a sort of hip-hop Al Green. He's got that same sort of extraordinarily relaxed delivery.
Languid.
Yes.
We'll listen to it later, but in relation to that, here's a very short clip, him talking about how is conversational, or conversating, we're not conversating, as a conversational rapper.
Going off of this, going off of that, with the Lizard King bumping in the back. How about that? drifting, lifting, swifting, coasting, testing, roasting. But the wheels won't stop.
Sort of more on the artistic side, you were saying that you don't want to be hollering when you're rapping.
Nah.
You're going to be like...
I'd rather be laid back conversating, because a conversation is deeper than somebody trying to, really get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a conversation is more understandable, it's more direct, it makes you stop and say,
Hey, Frank, you my mellow. Now let me hear what I sound like a cappella. Roll, ride, dip, sweat. Now bring it back, just like this. Like a dog.
And right there and then is why,
I like it.
for me, I'd say Snoop is sonically my favourite rapper.
He's one of, his voice really is unique, and it is special because it's so laid back and so cool.
Absolutely.
And it just has a great texture to it as well, so a slight gritty graveliness.
Yeah.
The way he uses language as well is very funny.
And there's just something really sweet about him, and that comes through in this interview,
this is a gentleness, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when he broke through and just thinking, well, this is something very different.
Yeah.
And there really hadn't been anybody like him before. He's 6'4", this beanpole from Long Beach. His mother came from... You can hear the sort of southern sort of lilt in the voice there, mother from Mississippi. And just the delivery was so unique. It was so laid back. It was like the hip-hop equivalent of like Al Green.
Absolutely, because at that point, it was Chuck D with Public Enemy, it was Ice Cube. These
much more in your face.
Much more in your face, very aggressive, very tough. And then suddenly this guy comes along, and it's all, rolling down a road, smoking Indo, sipping on gin and juice, which is, of course, an entirely autobiographical,
Yeah.
You were saying yesterday, didn't he smoke something like 80 blunts a day? Well, that's been claimed anyway.
Ridiculous. He did briefly try and give up, apparently, in the 2000s. And that lasted about 6
I'm sure
months.
that worked. It's very funny. In more recent years, I think he visited some prize-winning British farmer who'd grown like the largest chard or something like that to get growing tips for his... it's not mentioned any of the TV coverage what it's for, but it's extremely obvious.
And
in fact, he invites the farmer to smoke with him, although the coverage won't mention what they're smoking. It's quite clear. And the farmer afterwards is very sort of like, Snoop's a really nice guy. And it's funny because I think Snoop has gone from being, a gangster, with a murder charge hanging over him, to almost like a sort of national treasure status. Everybody loves Snoop. He hangs out with the most unlikely people.
Yeah.
He does a segment that I showed you guys earlier, Planet Earth, with Snoop Dogg, where he narrates nature documentaries, which is hilarious. If you haven't
Snoop
seen
Dogg
it,
as David Attenborough.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg as David Attenborough, and it's really very
He's
funny.
about to start a tour next week, a US tour. He'll be coming to the UK in April. The fact that he's still alive is quite remarkable, given the number of people who died in
and on that scene as well, at that
he
time
talks
between 93 and 96.
He talks in this interview about how he expects to have a short career. He says that, in the hip-hop game, people come and they go in a hurry. He, at this point, when he's being interviewed, probably can't foresee a career lasting more than another 2 years.
A career that also spans reggae. He had that brief period as Snoop Lion.
That's right. Snoop Lion. That was actually utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, it was absurd.
Smoke the weed every day. Don't smoke the seeds. No way. Smoke the weed. Hey, smoke the weed. Younger generation.
The other thing, that his things with women is worth mentioning. That he married his childhood sweetheart. They divorced in 2004, at which point he took up pimping. That lasted like 18 months before all the other pimps said, look, you're really not cut out for this game, Snoop. And then he remarried his childhood sweetheart. He's got one other child outside of that marriage, but otherwise all his children and now his grandchildren are a product of that marriage. That's pretty rare, full stop, so that's pretty good going.
I thought I'd go and read I thought I'd read the resulting piece from this. It's done. The interview is done by Steven Daly, former drummer with Orange Juice, who reinvents himself as a really great music writer in New York in the early 90s. The piece was published February 1994 in The Face, and it's a really, really good piece. Obviously, he talks about the murder charge that he couldn't ask Snoop about in the interview. But he uses this phrase, he talks about a tranced-out sway and a heavy-lidded stare that marked Snoop as the most magnetic figure in rap. And I think that's pretty kind of accurate. There was something really hypnotic about his mode of rapping.
And there's another really interesting thing about that rapping. He talks in the interview as well about the way that a lot of his rap kind of comes from freestyling, how he would show up to rap battles and basically win because he could make what he was saying relevant to what was going on, whereas other people came with pre-prepared lines.
Yeah.
And there are some really fantastic Snoop freestyles on YouTube that you can listen to that are just, just him riffing on whatever. And he's really funny as well. As a lyricist, he's funny and he's inventive with language. I mean, the whole, Plizanet, the whole izzle, shizzle, whatever. Like, it's all, he's just witty with it. And he's one of my favourite rappers.
Talk to him, Snoop. Wake your ass up, it's sway in the morning. I brushed my teeth and now I'm yawning. I jumped in the Sprinter van heading down the streets trying to get to the radio station to get complete. Yes. I stopped to get me something to eat at the store. I stopped to talk to a cute little hoe. She say, Snoop Dogg, can I go? I said, no.
So we'll hear one last clip at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
But Mark is now going to lead us through some other things that are here for subscribers.
What's hot
for subscribers?
Drop it like it's hot.
Starting in Melody Maker 66, this is interesting. Max Jones interviewing Rick Laird, bass player Rick Laird, who went on to be part of the first version of the Mahavishnu Orchestra quite a few years after this. Rick Laird had been the house bass player at Ronnie Scott's club. I guess with Stan Tracy playing piano and so on and so forth, it'd be around that time.
Right.
And he's about to leave England, go to Berkeley College in America to study and so on and so forth. And he's asked, who of all the people he backed at Ronnie's was interesting. He said Sonny Rollins. And he said Sonny was especially interesting in that we would never know what he was going to play or what key he was in or anything. And he's not saying that in a critical way. He's saying it was really interesting. And his respect for Sonny Rollins is absolutely huge. And the other guy he singles out is Ben Webster. I think it's very interesting that he liked playing with those two. I think it's time for our Mendo moment.
Mendo moment!
This is John Mendelsohn reviewing West Bruce and Lang at the Hollywood Palladium in 1972. Friday evening at the Hollywood Palladium, West Bruce and Lang and a new supergroup comprising the remnants of Mountain and Cream did for 1968 approximately what Sean and I made a career of doing for the late 50s. So nostalgic as they were, though, dwarfed by massive amplifier stacks and boisterously soliciting ovations for one another's virtuosity at the conclusion of every song, their music was insufferable tedium.
Ouch. There we go.
Yeah, so there we are.
Once again.
That's our classic
Mendo.
Mendo moment.
How many supergroups,
They're all
essentially
terrible. They were all terrible.
Insufferably tedious,
I
all.
saw Mountain.
Especially the power trip.
I saw Mountain at the Rainbow.
Yeah, well,
I hate to say it.
Surprised you didn't see West Bruce and Lang.
I rather enjoyed Mountain. Mississippi Queen.
Big fat Leslie West.
Moving on, a year later, Disc 1973, the marvellously named Rosalind Russell, not the Rosalind Russell, interviewing Sweet's Brian Connolly. And she's fairly sharp about him. She first of all describes him as looking not half as beautiful as he looks on top of the pots, but somewhat haggard and so on and so forth. Oof. And he's ghastly. He takes himself far too seriously on this. He says, I think the dressing up is necessary because the kids are into glam rock. We'll move with the times, with new clothes. Well, that worked well. Glam rock is the most happening thing in America. I think the image helped a lot there. It didn't. Glam rock really didn't happen in America.
Didn't really pick up.
And it wasn't known as glam rock either.
Right. What was
it was called glitter rock.
Glitter rock.
Yeah, so glam didn't really have any resonance in American pop culture.
This is a really good piece because Rosalind Russell is really sharp. She's clearly got a certain degree of contempt.
I didn't know that Brian Connolly was supposed to be beautiful, I have to confess.
Well, Sweet were never really beautiful, were they?
They weren't lovely.
Though I remember that when we went to see the White Stripes, suddenly realising that what's his name from the White Stripes?
Jack White.
Had based his entire vocal.
Who'd have thought?
Had based his entire vocal style on the bass player from Sweet. What to do? That's true.
I think it was probably an unconscious influence if it was influence at all.
We just haven't got a clue what to do. Does anyone know the way? There's got to be a way.
The next piece is just fantastic. This is from January 1975, Village Voice. The marvellous Glenn O'Brien. I think Barney and I both agree.
Another one we've lost.
Yeah, one of our favourite writers. It's about the closure of Max's Kansas City. He says, on the last Wednesday of Advent, towards midnight, I had the urge and did taxi down to Max's Kansas City for a nightcap with a lady friend who happens to write a column of witticism and miscellany in an underground magazine for the wealthy. Arriving at a portal which one invariably felt had been entered once too often, we were nevertheless greatly disappointed, almost heartsick, to find the premises dark, the glass doors latched, and an ignominious close sign scrawled on a torn scrap of cardboard the only explanation. So Max's Can City closed down. He then goes into what the Max's Can City meant and so on and so forth. He says, Max's heroically mixed quality had, after all, led to such meetings as Alice Cooper and Lou Reed, Candy Darling and Divine, Andy Warhol and Valerie Solanas, Sergeant Shriver and Jackie Curtis, meetings which might not have a settings today. And although one could not immediately recall any of the great things that had been said there, one was nevertheless confident that they had been said, even though in the annals of memory the great nights had all merged into one vague recollection. One knew that there had been nights of greatness. Yes, when it was bad, it was very, very bad, but when it was good, it was fabulous. And, he's making this argument that Max's should have been preserved by New York State as a home of the arts. It's a wonderful, quite catty, quite camp piece of writing, which was Den O'Brien's special.
I mean, of course, Max's did reopen at the very end of that year and became quite an important punk club.
Right.
A lot of the New York punk bands and even some of the British punk bands played there. I think it finally closed probably around 81,
Did you
something
ever
like
visit
that.
it?
I did, yes, I did.
How did you find it? Did you meet Valerie Solanas there?
No.
Scum. Or Candy Darling.
I steered clear of any woman who was intending to cut up men.
Yeah. He mentioned,
even in those days.
He mentions in this piece that
Very forward-thinking.
that the ladies' room would be full of camp boys, and
Max's was the great place where all the New York singsters, and Glenn was one of the great New York singsters, came together. I mean, it was always like there would be someone like Lou Reed sitting in the back booth.
Glenn was a major part of Andy Warhol's interview magazine, wasn't he? That was one of his major platforms.
Absolutely. I mean, he was a key Warhol acolyte.
Moving forward to 83, Cream magazine, Anine Kay interviewing Duran Duran's John Taylor, who I've heard subsequently, a lot of people say actually he's actually a really nice man. He comes over as an absolute twat in this piece. We've realised that we are pop stars, so whatever we say is the right thing for pop stars to say.
Oh, beautiful. What a lovely bit of recursion.
And later on, I can't stand politics personally. I think it's incredibly boring. I'd rather write songs about parties. All I know is that at least with Margaret Thatcher we pay less tax.
Hey, it's the 80s.
It's the 80s.
I'm so glad to see
yourself,
another
John
Anine
Taylor.
piece in there. She was a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, is still a dear friend of mine, except she lives in the back of beyond in sort of North Carolina somewhere. Haven't seen her for a while, but one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And had this kind of brief life writing for Cream and writing for other American rock mates. Always very, very funny.
Yeah,
I mean, this is mainly John Taylor talking.
It's all,
but there's a very funny little intro.
And also she managed to arrange what he says in a very kind of funny sort of way.
Notorious.
Going on to another live review from Los Angeles Times, this time Van Halen at the Forum. And I think Richard Cromelin gets kind of what's great about David Lee Roth as a performer. I mean, none of us particularly love Van Halen.
I do.
Well, the first couple of albums are really good. They became pretty tedious in a hurry. But David Lee Roth, I think we all kind of rather love, don't we?
Oh,
I mean, love reading interviews.
One of the smartest and funniest rock stars of all time.
And I think he catches what this guy's like live here really well. He says, on stage, Roth turns the difficult trick of combining intimacy with huge scale. The sound, the close encounters lighting consoles, and a stage full of two-story speakers and high-tech scaffolding inflate that scale. Then Roth bounds out in his shredded pants and effortlessly connects with the back rows, turning the arena into a big rec room. He's larger than life, but at the same time so down to earth, you have no trouble picturing him hanging out in the mall with you and your buddies. '91, Cher being interviewed by Mull, Peachy and Vox. I love Cher. It's got to be said. I think she takes herself seriously enough to work really hard and do good stuff, but she doesn't take herself that
She's been
seriously.
playing in London this week as well. So
Yes, that's right.
O2, rave reviews.
And she talks about the early days. She says, in those days, it wasn't my place to choose songs. Snuff Garrett would find them and he and Sonny would decide how to do them. I'd sing them, just that. She's got a reputation that's been difficult. She says, I don't mind a good argument. I don't go looking for them, but I certainly don't shy away from them. I don't think art is a place to be nice.
Fair play.
Which is
yeah, I think that's a fair point.
And I was cheered to see that she was referring to the US president as an asshole
That's
at
always
the O2 last week or earlier this week. So she still tells it like she sees it.
I always thought she was a remarkably good actress. I don't think she's actually kind of... I mean, Silkwood, I thought she was fantastic in. Mask, she was absolutely fantastic in. You very rapidly, you're not watching Cher anymore. You're watching...
Which is a good sign if an actor's not...
Exactly. Exactly. Moving on, the next year, 1992, Danny Baker apparently was the last person to interview, last journalist to get to interview Michael Jackson before he more or less stopped being interviewed at all. I believe he did do some television interviews later in his life, but so he goes to review him at Wembley Stadium, and the piece involves a sort of him pretending to interview Michael backstage and so on. And he just puts this in at the end. He says, "This is a dread confession to write, but I think Michael Jackson will not grow old. Like Monroe or Elvis, there's a tragedy waiting to be played out here. You just watch." I mean, it's 1992. That's
quite an early...
Yeah.
But I mean,
he
I guess
was
for
already
everyone...
demented by 1992.
He was,
it's
but
not such an extraordinary.
But you weren't expecting
broadcast.
you weren't expecting him to die.
No.
Last thing I'm going to really talk about is a really brilliant little piece from ID by Susan Corrigan. She's an American woman journalist. This is from October 95. And who had fallen in love with the sort of punk Manchester at great remove, buying the NME from the local store and all that, the Buzzcocks, all of that sort of stuff. Then she had got into the Smiths, hadn't got the Stone Roses and Happy Mondays at all, but then for the first time, she's invited by a friend to come over to Manchester, and she says, "The groups I once slagged off now rule the city, none more so than Happy Mondays and Stone Roses. My friends were going to Blackpool to see the Roses. Did I fancy it? Dry opened in Oldham Street, so we went to get pissed and discovered Shaun Ryder got there first. 808 State were a resident in some black hole near the bus station. And the Hacienda? The snotty fashion victims had gone, replaced by thousands of smiling, gurning kids who were happy dancing to Voodoo Ray as well as I Am the Resurrection. Sitting in a car around the corner from a Rush Home Curry House, my friend and I shared a fat spliff and decided we were in heaven."
Convert.
Then she talks about how that scene went, the next time she went back, the place was desert. But this is written in the context of the rise of Oasis and a sort of yet another surge of sort of Manchester energy. So that's
Great.
That's my stuff.
Sounds
It's
like
a really
great
good
scene
piece.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. We'll look at the last sort of 20 years or so.
Times I know nothing of.
Shall I start in 2000?
Yeah.
With a little, slightly unusual, not what we usually have. And we've got 3 other Terry Riley pieces, but this is our 4th. Terry Riley, classic minimalist, master composer. But I thought it was interesting because it also mentions Chet Baker, because this album that was released, The Gift, around this time, that Edwin Pouncey is reviewing for The Wire, he thinks the highlight is a collaboration between Riley and Chet Baker. I mean, it's not from that time because Chet Baker, of course, was dead by that point, but because it's a sort of archival release of some stuff, that's where that comes from. And he says, "Here Baker's bluesy trumpet breaks are recycled through a series of loops using 2 tape recorders so that live performance and recorded sound reverberate against each other to create a trance-like echo effect. The technique Riley used here was basically simple, but what emerges is complex, hypnotic, and wildly psychedelic."
That sounds really
and it sounds really interesting. I haven't listened to it, but I think that actually, the last sentence really captures minimalist composition a lot of the time. If it's done really well, it can be, it's very simple, but becomes complex through repetitions and through all of that.
My brother bought Rainbow and Curved Air when I guess I was about 12 or 13 when I first heard Terry Riley, therefore. I didn't know what the context was, anything. It was this record my brother put on. And it was sort of, it would go round and round and round, and was kind of beautiful, you know. I had a very nice cover. It was part of like the hippie, your hippies record collection was Rainbow and Curved Air. Very interesting guy, Terry Riley. It's great. We must listen to that.
We must. I'm a fan of minimalism. Moving on to 2002, something rather different. One Señor Coconut. This is Adam Sweeting, who to my surprise, is rather a fan of Señor Coconut's version of a bunch of Kraftwerk songs in a sort of Latin Mexican style, which is so bizarre.
That Germanic pronunciation.
So despite his name, his album title, and the fact that his introduction is in Spanish, Señor Coconut is a German called Uwe Schmidt who fronts a 6-piece Danish backing band. And they've done these covers. El Baile Alemán, which is the name of the album, means the German dance. A perfectly logical title for Herr Coconut's Latin-tinged Kraftwerk tribute LP recorded in Chile. Only a maniac, you would think, would filter the Düsseldorf Wunderkinder through an array of South American dance beats, but it works staggeringly well, not least because of the ingeniously Kraftwerkian vocals. And it is very funny. I have actually listened to it, and it's a totally bizarre album. I imagine you'd hate it, because it's really pretty stupid. I also find it slightly questionable that he sort of Hispanic faces for this album, and it's a little bit sort of, well, I mean, for his whole shtick. But
Hispanic face.
Hispanic. But it is a funny idea to do Kraftwerk as Latin stuff. And some of it works surprisingly well.
Yeah, but for how long?
Because not for very long, but
right.
because of the Kraftwerk's repetitive rhythms, again, that when it's combined with the dance rhythms of Latin music, it can be quite funny. So Adam Sweeting's a fan, gave it 4 out of 5 stars.
Well, there you go.
It's uniquely Jasper-esque, isn't it?
Yeah,
Some of these acts, I think, I really doubt they exist until
he
Jasper
makes them
plays them. Their music created for Jasper many years in advance.
Next.
Lastly, for me, I've got an interview with Blick Bassi, who's a pretty great Cameroonian musician, and he lives and works in France. And this is an interview by Laura Barton with him in 2015.
Cool.
And it's a really nice interview, and he talks about all sorts of things going through, you know, the reason why he lives at this point. He lives in a small village of 1,000 people near Calais because he felt he needed to get out of Paris because he was feeling sort of stagnant in that context. And he lives in a low house next door to the garlic cellar. And he says he laughs, the only exotic character, quote, in a community where all they have in terms of knowledge of Africa is through the news on TV. And what is that? Ebola, presidential coups, nothing real, actually. But he's found that they've actually, when meeting him, have been super welcoming. He recounts a tale of being met by the police and being worried about, you know, getting stopped, but in fact it was just, you know, wishing him a nice day kind of thing. So he's really enjoying that sense of local community that I think he probably missed when in Paris.
It's interesting, Paris became, over the last 30 years, a centre of a lot of African pop. We tend to forget that Francophone Africa is actually the centre of most modern African music that we listen to, not Anglophone Nigeria or South Africa, but very much, you know, Mali, Cameroon, and so on and so forth. No, it's
and he talks about maintaining roots to Cameroon, because he really does still feel very strongly with that.
Sure.
But, you know, he's just very intelligent and very interesting.
Also, Laura Barton's a terrific interview.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And his music's good, so that's I just thought it was a good, nice piece.
What about you, Barney? Yeah. Got any jewels for us?
Well, do just 3 things I'll mention very briefly in passing. One is an interview with a fascinating writer, Glenn MacDonald. This is from the rockcritics.com site, Stephen Ward, interviewing this extraordinary guy who refused to be paid for reviewing albums. It was just like a hobby, and his whole sort of mission was to declare war on rock criticism. And he just talks very interestingly in this interview about reviewing and about writing.
So who did you write for?
I think he wrote for himself. He had his own website, and that was it. But he became a bit of a cult figure.
I wonder if he managed to monetize that.
I don't think he needed to. He had a sort of day job.
Right.
You know, he didn't give up the day job. But he's an interesting mind, definitely. Cool. There's a piece by the late Robert Sandel from 2009, which is all about pop superstars playing private parties for sort of oligarchs and the like.
A little bit like the Baku gig that J-Lo in Baku.
A little bit, exactly. But there's a mention of Philip Green's birthday party in the Caribbean. I mean, there's numerous examples that Robert gives, but it is sort of shocking the amount that sort of, I think George Michael flies to Mustique, plays about 13 songs, and I think he's paid like $2 million. I mean, and this became quite a kind of
it's
regular thing. Yeah, quite certainly lucrative.
I mean, it's two stories in one, really, because it also tells us about the emergence of the super rich.
The global super rich who want to throw that kind of party.
And who have that sort of money.
Absolutely.
You know, in a way that they wouldn't have 30 years before. I mean, maybe one or two would have. But the idea that you're going to... Like Elton John, for example, he was on that circuit. He was playing people's private parties all over the place for vast amounts of money. It means he always just plays one show, and then he can sit on his arse for the next 6 months if he chooses to.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I mean, that well paid is astonishing business.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just lastly, in 2011, Bob Dylan was 70. Michael Simmons rounded up a bunch of Dylan collaborators to just talk about what it's like working with Bob, and that's people like Daniel Lanois, and they all say very interesting things about what a bizarre man he is.
Yeah.
It's really long. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's writers, there's musicians, there's producers, there's engineers. It's a real kind of festschrift of tributes to
my old
Dylan.
friend Janie Romer had a relationship with Tony Garnier. And I met him once, but
Who's that? Sorry.
He's Dylan's bass player. He's been his bass player forever now. He's been on the road on this never-ending tour that Dylan's been doing since God knows the 80s. I think Garnier started with him. You know, it could well be as long ago as that.
It might be. I think 90s probably.
Definitely 90s. Definitely 90s, but possibly as early as it. Bass player and sort of MD. You know, as musicians come and go. I mean, how do you sustain that life? I mean, the thing is, Dylan doesn't like being at home. The road has
Home is the
become his
road.
home.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
I think that's brought us to the end of our roundup of library editions. Mark, we're going to go out with another Snoop clip.
I particularly love this clip. He's kind of talking about growing up with Al Green on the hi-fi at home and sort of what he's taken from that. And he talks in this clip about how he and Dre don't use samples. They don't sample. Just everything's played. They'll play the original tune, but they'll play it to sort of like bring it.
They'll interpolate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just he talks about Al Green really real beautifully. There's real respect and love. So there we go.
That's it from us.
That's it from us.
Number 50.
Yeah.
We did it.
Do you want to just say what about the giveaway again?
Yeah, sure. Head on over to rocksbackpages.com/giveaway and enter there by subscribing on iTunes, by subscribing on Spotify, following and all that stuff on all the social media, and that'll get you a bunch of entries to win.
Basically, just
books
love
and
us.
subscriptions.
Love us.
Yeah.
Please.
By the way, I just noticed horror that he's wearing a Jack Rocks Cola, Jack Daniels t-shirt.
Yeah. I didn't want to say
Coca-Cola
anything.
is the most disgusting thing you can do to Jack Daniels.
I got this. I
What's your
think I
body?
probably got given this at a festival. That's where it came from.
It's no excuse, Jeff.
excuse.
You should know better. The fact that you've come direct from a Foals gig in Oxford is no excuse.
Furs gig.
I mean, that's the only thing I can put it down to, because normally...
You drink Jack Daniels, though.
I do, but not with bloody Coca-Cola in it.
Sure, no.
On
I think this is for another
On
episode.
that happy note, I think we'll say goodbye.
This is the end of the 50th episode of the Rock That Pages podcast. Thank you both for...
Next week... Sorry, carry on. I was going to say, next week... Is Caroline Sullivan next week?
Next week, Caroline Sullivan is due to join us. We're really looking forward to that. For the 51st episode of the Rock That podcast. And there'll be another giveaway with lots of other
Well, it
things.
actually is running. It's running for a month.
It's running for a whole
you've
month.
You've got a month to,
Until episode 54.
I
or
guess
3.
so.
I can't do my maths.
Something like that.
Anyway,
it's running until
look, I just want to say it's a year since we started this madness, and it's been a lot of fun, and I hope it continues to be a lot of fun. We hope to have lots more interesting guests over the coming months and years. Jesus, decades. We'll just be here every Thursday, just whittering on about rock and
Barney,
roll and related genres.
I'll be dead by then.
You'll still have to come in for the podcast. Okay, on that note, that brings us up to the hour mark. We're going to say goodbye. We love you. Thanks for listening.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, nigga, I'm still fucking with you. Still waters run deep. Still Snoop Dogg and D.R.E.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because Al Green, especially in England, means a lot to people.
I mean, that was the music that my mama played. Al Green, I was just real young listening to Al Green and the Dramatics, and his voice was all I heard on the music. So, I mean, he touched me. The lyrics he wrote were real deep, and I mean, they were understandable at the age I was at. he was just reality at the time, and I mean, he was a big influence to me. I mean, it shows through my music. I even try to sing while I'm laughing. I mean, it's real deep. The way artists from yesteryear can have an impression on the artists of today, because a lot of people like to sample, but I don't like to sample. I'd rather redo your song, you know what I'm saying? To make it sound the same way you did, you know what I'm saying? The sample is just taking your work. I'd rather redo it and make it clarified, clear like that, the quality, you know what I'm saying, of the work. And Al Green was a quality artist.
Guess who's back? Still doing that shit, Andre? Oh, for sure. Yeah. Check me out.
That was Snoop Doggy Dogg in conversation with Steven Daly in 1993, concluding the 50th episode of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. The hosts are Barney Hoskins and Mark Pringle, and it was co-hosted and produced by Jasper Mewis and Bowie. For more information about our giveaway, running until November 22nd, please visit rocksbackpages.com/giveaway. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com.